Welcome to your deep dive. We're going to be taking a look at some really fascinating articles today. They're from Fair Play Magazine, issue 22. Um, and they take a look at the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and present some alternative theories.
It's going to be a really interesting journey. The articles bring up all sorts of things like witness testimonies, forensic analysis, even potential connections to intelligence agencies.
So let's just jump right in, right from the get-go. One thing that really stands out is that even Dr. King's own family didn't believe that James Earl Ray, the man convicted, was actually guilty.
Yeah. The King family always maintained that Ray was innocent, which, really makes you wonder. I mean, if even his own family didn't believe the official explanation, it definitely raises questions about whether justice was really served.
And then the articles go on to suggest that there was a pretty big push at the time to make sure everyone believed that Ray acted alone, like the lone gunman narrative. They even use the term mighty Wurlitzer.
That term, mighty Wurlitzer, comes from the Cold War, basically. It's all about how governments, specifically intelligence agencies, would try to control how people saw things. Propaganda.
Yeah.
So in this case, it's suggesting that someone was actively shaping how we all understood the assassination.
So if there was this big effort to, control the story being told, what were they trying to hide? What didn't they want us to know? Well, the Fair Play articles go deep into a lot of eyewitness accounts that go against the official story.
Yeah, and some of those firsthand accounts are really hard to just ignore. Like, there's this guy, John McFerrin, who claimed he overheard a conversation about King's assassination before it even happened. Super suspicious.
It seems like that would have been a pretty big red flag for the FBI, right? And a House Select Committee on Assassinations.
You'd think, right? But McFerrin was never even allowed to testify before the House committee. It makes you wonder why they wouldn't want to hear what he had to say.
Almost like they were trying to keep certain information under wraps. And then there's the account from Reverend James Orange. He was there at the Lorraine Motel. He saw the smoke from the shot and where it came from. But those bushes were cut down the next day.
It's these little details that make you question how thorough the investigation actually was.
For sure. And then there's Lloyd Jowers, the guy who owned Jim's Grill near the Lorraine Motel. He straight up confessed to being part of a conspiracy and said he was paid a bunch of money to make it happen.
And even more than that, his lawyer, Lewis Garrison, came forward with documents that suggest investigators actually knew about Jowers' potential involvement, but they never followed up on it.
Okay, hold on. That's a lot to unpack. We're talking about someone who was potentially involved in the assassination. There's evidence, and the investigators just ignored it. And on top of that, there's this whole other thing about a mysterious figure called Rawl who was connected to the assassination.
This is where things get even more wild. Former FBI agent Donald Wilson actually found pieces of paper with Raoul's name on them and a phone number. And guess what? The phone number was linked to Jack Ruby's nightclub in Dallas.
Jack Ruby, the guy who shot Lee Harvey Oswald. Wait, are we talking about a possible connection between the King and Kennedy assassinations?
It's not explicitly stated, but the link to Jack Ruby through this Raoul guy definitely raises some eyebrows. And get this, Wilson was actually prosecuted for keeping those pieces of paper as evidence. That's crazy.
Wow, so someone found evidence that might link the King assassination to the Kennedy assassination, and they were prosecuted for keeping it.
Yeah, it's like they really wanted to keep a lid on this whole thing. And speaking of trying to keep things quiet, we can't forget about Jerry Ray, James Earl Ray's brother.
What happened with him?
Well, he was actually accused by Congress of robbing a bank with his brother James to pay for the assassination. It got so bad that he turned himself in to the police to try and clear his name, even though technically too much time had passed for him to even be charged.
He basically called their bluff, right?
Exactly. And like you might expect, no one ever came forward with any evidence to back up those accusations. Even the police confirmed he was never a suspect in any robbery. It's almost like they were just trying to smear anyone connected to James Earl Ray. And this whole thing about questionable evidence makes me think about Judge Joe Brown. He was the one assigned to James Earl Ray's appeal case, right?
Judge Brown, yeah, he was a real stickler for the rules. And he definitely had some issues with the evidence in the case.
Oh, yeah. He was outspoken about it. He questioned where Ray's aliases came from, had problems with the murder weapon itself, the whole 9 yards. He even said publicly that he thought there was enough evidence to justify a full-blown investigation into a possible conspiracy.
And then, poof, he was suddenly removed from the case.
Just like that. No explanation given. And after he was off the case, he straight up said he believed Dr. King's death was the result of a conspiracy. He went on to say he thought the district attorney's office and the media were more interested in protecting a certain narrative than finding the truth.
And he wasn't just talking, he actually knew his stuff. He was a gun expert and pointed out inconsistencies in the lead composition of the bullet that killed Dr. King. He was also skeptical about whether that rifle was ever even properly sighted in.
He even mentioned that the type of rifle it was, supposedly rested on a windowsill, wouldn't have fired. Or would have jammed. Little details like that.
And the Fair Play articles argued that big media outlets just went along with the official story. They didn't really look into or report on any evidence that went against the lone gunman theory.
They even specifically criticized Gerald Posner's book on the assassination, the one that backs up the lone gunman idea. They call out his claim that Ray was racist because he wouldn't transfer to a prison honor farm with black inmates.
What's wrong with that?
Well, they point out that Ray was already in a prison with black inmates, so why would transferring to another one be a problem if he was really racist?
Good point. And finally, there's the King family's push for a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, just like they had in South Africa.
They weren't out for revenge. They just wanted to know what truly happened. And that's pretty powerful.
It really is. It suggests they were more interested in healing and understanding than anything else. So what do you think? Are we looking at a massive cover-up here?
I don't know about massive, but these Fair Play articles definitely lay out a compelling case for a deeper look into what happened to Dr. King. There are just too many unanswered questions and strange coincidences to ignore.
Agreed. It seems like there's a lot more to this story than meets the eye. So we've been talking about how these Fair Play articles suggest that evidence in the King assassination might have been, well, messed with.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder what else might have been hidden or ignored to make that lone gunman theory stick.
Like with those two witnesses, Reed and Hendricks, who said they saw Ray's car speeding away before the shooting even happened.
15 minutes before, according to them. That just blows the official timeline right out of the water. But it was never brought up in any of the official reports.
It's almost like someone wanted to make sure certain details never saw the light of day. And then there's that whole thing about the ballistics evidence.
Right. There was this police lieutenant, later named by Jowers as being involved, who was worried about a tree branch near that bathroom window, the one Ray supposedly shot from.
He thought the tree branch would mess up the official story about where the bullet came from.
Exactly. He wanted it removed, which makes you think, was evidence tampered with to make everything fit that lone gunman narrative.
That's a pretty serious accusation.
Yeah.
And hold on, there's more, right? What about that second rifle that was supposedly found at the crime scene?
Right, yeah. The one that was never officially acknowledged. If there were two rifles, the whole idea of Ray acting alone falls apart.
And they knew who that second rifle belonged to.
According to the Fair Play articles, yep, it belonged to one of the guys on Dr. King's security detail in Memphis.
Didn't that security officer end up getting pulled away from his post right before the assassination?
He did. He said he was taken to police headquarters, saw a bunch of high-up military guys there, then was basically told to go home because of a threat against him, which meant he was nowhere near Dr. King when the shooting happened.
Wow. That's a lot of coincidences. Sounds like they were really making sure certain people weren't around.
It definitely raises some red flags.
Yeah.
And don't forget, the Fair Play articles also suggest that the media might have been pressured to go along with the official story. They mention that mighty Wurlitzer again.
So they're saying there was an effort to make sure any information that challenged the official narrative was suppressed or discredited.
Exactly. And they even call out some big names in the media, like Dan Rather and CBS, for relying so much on Gerald Posner's book.
The one that said Ray was racist because he didn't want to go to a prison with black inmates.
Yep. But the articles point out that Ray was already in a prison with black inmates, so why would transferring to another one be such a big deal if he was truly racist?
It does seem like a weak argument, like they were trying too hard to paint him as a certain type of person.
Right. And amidst all of this, the King family's response is really powerful. They wanted a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, like they had in South Africa. They weren't about revenge. They just wanted to know the truth.
That says a lot about their character, that they were more focused on understanding and healing than anything else. And it really makes you think, were they right to question the official narrative? Was there something more going on here?
These Fair Play articles present a lot of evidence that suggests there might be. There are just too many loose ends, too many unanswered questions. We can't just brush them aside.
Absolutely. This whole thing feels like the tip of the iceberg, like we're just scratching the surface of something much bigger.
And maybe that's what's so important about these articles. They remind us that we should always be questioning, always be digging deeper, especially when it comes to events that have shaped our history.
You're right. We can't just blindly accept the official story. We need to be critical thinkers, examine the evidence, and be open to the possibility that there might be more to the story than we've been told.
And that brings us to another interesting point raised by these fair play articles. They draw some striking parallels between the King assassination and the assassination of President John F. Kennedy.
Yeah, they suggest there might be some connections there, especially when you consider the possible involvement of intelligence agencies and the potential for a cover-up.
We'll dig into those parallels after a quick message from our sponsors.
So these fair play articles, they don't just focus on the King assassination, right? They also bring up some interesting points about the JFK assassination.
They do, and it's kind of eerie how both of these events, just a few years apart, still have people debating and speculating about what really happened.
The articles seem to suggest there could be some links between the two cases, especially when you think about the possibility of intelligence agencies being involved, and maybe even a cover-up in both cases.
It's a thought-provoking idea for sure, and they talk about a book that really digs into the JFK assassination and how the Warren Commission's report, the official one, was criticized for being full of holes, just like what we're seeing with the King assassination.
Almost like history is repeating itself,
Yeah.
ignoring evidence that doesn't fit and all that.
Yeah, it's a pattern that seems to keep popping up. Like, they mentioned the doctors who treated Governor Connolly, who was in the car with Kennedy in Dallas. Those doctors said there's no way the bullet that supposedly went through Kennedy could have then hit Connolly the way it did. Like, physics wouldn't allow it.
So the official explanation doesn't really add up. And on top of that, there's that missing bullet fragment.
Oh, yeah. The one from the x-ray of Connolly's chest. It just vanished, never mentioned again.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if they were just trying so hard to present this, clean and simple story that they just swept any inconvenient details under the rug.
And anyone who questioned the official story was labeled a conspiracy theorist or something like that, right?
Pretty much. It's easier to dismiss someone than to actually address their concerns, I guess. And there's even talk about the Zapruder film.
That's the home movie of the Kennedy assassination.
Yep, the one everyone's seen. And the Fair Play articles actually mention an analysis that suggests the film might have been tampered with, which, if true, is pretty huge.
Wow. If what these articles are suggesting is even partially true, it means that we've been told a very different story than what actually happened. Not just about King, but about Kennedy, too.
It's unsettling, to say the least. But I think it's important that we're having this conversation, that we're not just taking the official story at face value.
Absolutely. It's all about being critical thinkers and seeking out the truth,
Yeah.
even if it's uncomfortable. And, reading these fair play articles really made me think about the importance of questioning authority and demanding transparency.
I feel the same way. There's a sense of responsibility that comes with knowing this information, a responsibility to keep these stories alive and to make sure we learn from them. And the King family's call for truth and reconciliation really speaks to that, doesn't it?
It does. It shows that they understood that true healing can only happen when we acknowledge the truth, no matter how difficult it might be.
And it's not just about the past, right? It's about how we move forward, about making sure we're holding our leaders accountable and demanding justice in all its forms.
So where do we go from here? We've explored these alternative theories, looked at the evidence, and considered the possibility of cover-ups and media manipulation. It's a lot to take in.
It is. But I think the most important takeaway from all of this is the importance of being informed, engaged, and critical. History isn't just something that happened a long time ago. It shapes who we are and how we understand the world.
And it's constantly evolving. New information comes to light, new perspectives emerge, and it's up to us to be open to those changes and to keep learning and growing.
Exactly. We can't just passively accept what we're told. We need to question, to research, to have those uncomfortable conversations. That's how we ensure that history doesn't repeat itself.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener. It's shown us that there's always more to learn, more to uncover, and it's a reminder that the pursuit of truth and justice is an ongoing process, not a destination. Thanks for joining us on this journey.
It's been a fascinating conversation.
We hope it sparked your own curiosity and encouraged you to keep digging deeper, keep asking questions, and never stop seeking the truth. That's what this deep dive is all about.